And one of our final questions, again, digging into sort of the solutions that retailers can focus on right now. What are some of the integration solutions and other solutions available to perhaps a Shopify merchant who wants to engage in re-commerce? What are the steps that they could take right now to implement some of these solutions that we've been talking about?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think there's two sides to this. One is that um, to Ben's point around customer experience and the process. One of the things that we see a lot of is that merchants have very ad hoc return policies. They're very hard um, to build workflows around. And one of the things that we always say to people is document your return process because, to your point, Ben, e-commerce is a trust relationship. It always has been. I mean, I can have the slickest website. I put my credit card in, and I could be ripped off. And so, people are wary. I'm certainly wary every time I buy because I want to make sure that it's a credible retailer and that there's a credible returns process. So, one of the things that we say to people is document your return process so that we at least understand the parameters around which your return process is going to operate. And then if you look in the Shopify merchant world, there's a lot of plugins, and I'm not going to name any specifically, but there's a lot of plugins now that really facilitate the whole front end customer experience around providing the label, pulling up the order, choosing the line item, providing the label, and have automation around, or where I can implement automation around the refund process. But I think that where the disconnect becomes, and I think to your point, Ben, that we see is that everybody's focused on the front end. I'm going to get the customer to give me the return, print the label, ship the product back. In some case, I'll just create an exchange order or I'll give an automatic refund without actually seeing the product come back. And then it's like, yeah, I haven't really thought about the back end process. I'm going to deal with it at a later date because my return rate is 10% and that doesn't cost me very much. But I think that that whole process, the facilitation on the front end exists and is getting better and is getting slicker. But where the disconnect is what happens on the back end and where the business now starts to look at, okay, I got all these returns piling up in my warehouse, or to your point, the return is moving around in space because it's in the interest of the players that are providing the return process to keep it going. Um, and I think that that's where we've seen that the the traceability and the accountability seems to fall apart.
Yeah,
And
no, I'd agree. I'd agree with that. I mean, the question was, what can Shopify merchants do, to start to engage in this? And I would say, firstly, and to expand on your point, Robin, really just think about what you're doing to start. You talk about documenting the process. Documenting the process doesn't stop at the item gets back to the warehouse, right?
no,
It actually extends to what next, and really what next. Not I mean, I talk to merchants and saying, "Oh, do you know what? We'll donate it. We'll give it to a local charity. Let they can make some money out of this." Well, no, actually, what you're doing is subcontracting the problem out to business to organisations and entities who actually are ill prepared, to deal with it. So you're actually passing a cost to these guys rather than giving them a revenue. I know it feels beneficial. And it works to a certain extent, but there's a break even point for some of these guys. And I'm not saying that the bigger charities aren't geared up for it because they are, but there are an awful lot that aren't, right? So in
right.
terms of understand your process, but I think as a business, sit down and think about where you think you should be, and if you take away that I don't want this to cost me as much because that's almost a given most of the time. Now, if you take that, it's what can I do to be more environmentally sympathetic and they're operationally more efficient. And and to me, the two are combined, particularly if you're selling overseas. Think about doing stuff in market to start with. What can I do locally? Because financially, if I get the same result by doing it at home as I can do in the market in which I'm selling, I should do it in the market in which I'm selling, because I can actually talk about the fact that I'm not flying kilos of product back. We're automatically becoming more environmentally sympathetic. So I would say, but for you to do that, you need to understand the condition and the condition and the value of that item when it's come back right.
Correct. Yeah.
Get your head around the resale value of the items. What you're going to sell and when, because that will very much dictate what next for each of those items. So that's where I would focus. And this is not a tech solution per se. This is a data-driven solution, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I'm sure you and I could have a conversation about the quality of data that floats around. But if you can enrich,
absolutely.
If you can enrich your data to the level where it enables you to make better decisions more quickly, I think that what you then start to see is that there are natural conclusions to what you should do with certain items in certain locations. And that to me, there's a real easy button there, right? This stuff is out there. It's what we do. It's what you do. And to your point, there are other providers out there that will say that they will do the same. But I would look at that. If you understand the resale value of your item and the condition of those things, a lot of other things then tend to fall in behind it.
And to fall into place. Yeah, the only thing that does come to mind though is where I think people need to think more seriously about that whole process. And I agree with you. If it works in your market, then why would you not have the same model in other markets if it's possible? But where somebody's selling to a marketplace, like let's say I'm a supplier to Amazon, for example, and Amazon is selling my products. The return process through Amazon, yes, it's very efficient. I can ship the product back to give me my money back. But I mean, we all read the horror stories in the news about how Amazon returns end up in landfill.
Yeah.
Even for products that are perfectly fine and there's nothing wrong with them.
Yeah. I've seen it.
I've seen it too. I mean, it's the kind of thing where I think that people need to look seriously at the channels that they sell through. It's not just the direct to consumer, but more and more we see omni-channel marketplace plays also.
Yeah. It's, you mentioned, it's a great call out actually. I mean, you talked about Amazon, and I can speak from direct experience with this, that when you've got a business which again isn't limited by intellectual and financial capital, and yet they struggle with this, it's there's and not and it's not actually fair to just call them out, but it's when you offer a logistics process which says, hey, it's really easy just to inject your stock in there and we're going to go put it everywhere. There is Amazon have liquidation channels, and those liquidation channels, they then speak to the size of the problem. There's a reason that Amazon have high storage fees, those seasonal storage fees, and the fluid pricing structure for logistics. So absolutely right. And I think again, this is one of the things that I would point to and say it's broken. It doesn't encourage businesses to think sustainably. It says, look, we can help you sell it, but you know what? If you can't sell it, we're going to penalise you financially, and we want you to get it out. And all we're going to do is deliver the items into a local DC for you, and it's then up to you to get rid, or you can pay us to dispose of it. And the problem with that is, in particular, I don't know what it's like in the US, but I know that over here, as soon as you designate an item as waste, even if it's in perfect condition, it's not allowed to be resold. It's automatically become a waste product.
I'm not sure in North America. I would suspect it's probably very, very similar, given the sort of the laissez-faire attitude that we have around waste and waste management. So the other part of that is the packaging up of those returns and shipping them off to developing countries. You know, you look at what happened in East Africa with the apparel industry, the native cotton growers, I mean, and the apparel manufacturers there were completely wiped out by cheap imports, whether it was secondhand or brand new that had been cast off, product that was being shipped there by the container full, and undercutting local products. I think that whole discussion hasn't been looked at either.
No, and again, you know, you look at it from an environmental perspective. There used to be an industry there that employed people, right?
That's right.
That gave people jobs, gave them an income,
Yeah.
provided items that were usable. So, it was a product that was beneficial. But to your point, it got overwhelmed, you know, and so
Oh,
in passing these, and I think I touched on it earlier on, in moving the problem from one country to another, it's actually caused damage on a number of different levels because these businesses they couldn't make any money, right? So people stopped feeding, and you have
yep.
to be really careful, I think, as a manufacturer about how you do this. You know, and again, there are smart people in me out there that will see all sorts of different solutions available. But to your point, you know, think about it. You know, just think about mapping it out. Look at what you're going to do, and don't assume that giving this to somebody else is beneficial to them.
Well, you're just passing the buck.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, completely. Yeah, completely. And nobody wants to be the brand that's held up on the newspaper, right?